Welcome back to another episode of the Sheepdog Brotherhood. Doug Hewlett here, and with me, as always, I have Brett Atterbury. Some say he can change his own tires. I doubt it. But we are here. It's actually July 21st, and we wanted to sit down, continue our weekly podcast where we talk about what it means to be a sheepdog, what it means to honor our God-given duty to honor and dignify every woman. Holy cow! I bungled that, but I was trying to get into it from. I was trying to come in from a side door.
You want to tag me in on this one?
Yep. I don't know how I bungled that so poorly. Wow, go for it, Brett.
I think what you meant to say, Doug, is God has assigned as a duty to every man the dignity of every woman.
Yeah, that's correct. I was trying to get there from a side door. You walked up the driveway. That was easy.
Yeah, just it's better sometimes just to go right down the middle of the highway.
Yeah. But given recent events here in the U.S., I found myself thinking this week about the reality of what it means to do exactly that, to be a sheepdog, to stand in the gap, to do as God has called us to do, to lay down our lives for others. And obviously, in the wake here of the attempted assassination on former President Donald Trump, one of the obviously unintended consequences of that was the loss of life from Corey Comperatore, the firefighter that was at the rally that took a stray bullet. And I found myself this week thinking about the example that he set, obviously outside of him being a firefighter and a person who I would assume throughout the course of his career as a firefighter has run into burning buildings, putting his own life in jeopardy in order to save someone else. But in the incident last Saturday, where he dove on top of his wife and daughter to save them or protect them, and then unfortunately being shot and killed, it just had me thinking about the example that he set of being, what we would call a sheepdog, right? Someone who's willing to lay down their life for another. And I just found myself thinking about that. It's easy, I think, to say what you would do if you were in that kind of situation, right? To Monday morning quarterback something that may have happened. Man, if I was there, I would have pulled out my gun. I would have done X, Y, and Z. But, when bullets fly, so to speak, what does one actually do? And for a hero like Corey Comperatore, I'm not surprised that his reaction and his instinct was to dive on his wife and daughter and protect them, and in the process losing his life. But that's what I found myself thinking about this week. I know. Anyway, I wanted to share that, Brett. I'll let you bail me out here as I continue to ramble.
No, first of all, of course, just as we've seen, the outpouring of support for his family, because you sit there and you try to put yourself in that position, like you were saying, what would I do and all that, but there they were, just going out to see something incredible, once in a lifetime kind of experience. He's there with his family, clearly just in the middle of a very joyful moment, and literally seconds later just turns to tragedy. I think what's interesting, and this gets back to, what I would call like practicing. So when we talk about God has assigned as a duty to every man, the dignity of every woman. Well, how do you practice that? Or are you practicing that is a better thing to say. Are you practicing that in your inner circle with your spouse or, someone close to you, your daughters, your mother, your female colleagues, women in the community, women in society in general? Like, are you practicing that? And if so, how? And the reason I say that is we know that Corey Comperatore was a well-formed man in terms of that particular issue. Like, I don't know anything about him other than he fought fires. But
and
what
he was
you
very
can,
religious. I know that he was a very religious man, very
okay,
involved in his church. Yeah.
okay, that's great. What you can say is it's in the moment when bullets start flying, to use your words, that's where the training kicks in, so to speak, which he would know from his firefighting experience. But so what was his training? His training was, I will lay down my life for my wife. And was it his wife and his daughter was there? Who was it? Wife and daughter.
Wife and daughter.
And it's not that he was sitting around probably daily consciously thinking that, but he was building his character in such a way that when bullets start flying, what's your natural reaction is going to be is like, get the hell out of Dodge, right? I'm out of here, or jump behind something and protect yourself. His reaction was, from his training, was to protect his wife and his daughter by, I don't know exactly how it happened, but I assume he covered them in some way. And I think that's just incredible. It shows you that, like you were saying, Doug, it's easy to talk about, I would do this, I would do that. But I would almost guarantee you, if you're not practicing in your life this particular, I'll call it philosophy of dignifying women, then you would probably not act the way you think. You would probably not act the way you say you would act if you were suddenly put under an extremely high pressure situation that called upon you to act in such a way. You would probably be more likely to CYA, to cover your own butt, just as a natural reaction, right? So it's in that training, not just in this particular issue, but in many issues, it's in that training that you learn to overcome your natural reaction for self-preservation, for a better good, for a higher good.
And I think the other thing that obviously it's a tragedy, not only how he died, but the fact that, he didn't die at 97 years old of old age, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So clearly he was taken too soon. But I think, and maybe I'll catch heat for this, but I was thinking about what he was doing. As I said before, he was doing exactly what Christ called all of us to do, right? To love our neighbor as ourselves, and what honor it is to lay down one's life for another. Now, granted, this was his wife and his daughter, so clearly he loved them greatly and deeply. But we know that people who are willing to do that, I believe, are rewarded, right? I know we're both simultaneously, for those of us who are religious, you and I are both Christian men and deeply faithful men. We're both scared of dying and also happy, because our hope is that through the way we live our lives, we get to heaven, right? And if heaven is everything that we believe it to be, it's an amazing reward for a life well lived and for a faith maintained. And while it must be unbearably difficult for his wife and daughters to deal with the loss and all of the friends and family that he's left behind, I think about it and I realize that he died doing exactly what Jesus called all of us to do, to lay down our lives for another. And I have to imagine that because of that, he's off, enjoying his eternal reward in heaven with with Christ. So, obviously, I'm not speaking to his wife or his daughters. I'm not trying to console anyone, but just in my own head, trying to, how come one life was saved or others, avoided the bullet? Not just Donald Trump, but what if someone standing directly in front of him, right, happened to move out of the way or, reach for a piece of fried chicken and the bullet missed them, but he was diving on top of his wife, and I guess it's the way that I try and rectify how come some were saved and others were taken from us. But knowing that, he didn't get shot running away, he got shot laying down his life for his wife and daughter, doing exactly the thing that you and I talk about, which is honoring women, maintaining their dignity, and being a man in the way that we are called to be men, not just what society tells us. You have to be strong and full of muscles, and that's what a man is. That is not the definition of a man. It's doing what's right because it's the right thing to do. Saying and speaking the truth because it's truth, not because it's the thing that you think will get you the most amount of likes or avoid the most headaches.
Yeah, and just again, I don't know him other than what little has been shared on the news, but very likely based on his actions, just a man of virtue, right? A guy that was religious, as you said, but deeply concerned with how to be a good man, how to be a good husband, how to be a good father, how to be a good friend. And I think it just speaks to it. Not that couldn't have happened. It could have been really unfortunate that, he could have just been sitting there stationary and just been shot dead, right? Like right off the bat, possibility. But that he had a moment or two, clearly, as he realized what was happening, to make a decision and took action. And his first action was not to preserve himself, but to preserve the lives of his wife and his daughter, which is just amazing. Now, would he have done that for any stranger to the right, front, center, back of him? Perhaps. I don't know. But in this particular situation where his first move was towards protecting his wife, this is what we want to do. In this case, he did it very physically, but there's, a lot of what we're talking about is let's call it more just as real, but it's more things that you do on the psychological and spiritual level, right? In terms of how you empower women. There's the real world physical part, but it's like, well, even stepping into, again, I don't know him, but I would guess he's probably even at home where his wife, if they were asking his wife to talk about what kind of man he is, to your point, she wouldn't be talking about these superficial, stupid things that no one cares about. She would be talking about his character, what kind of man he was, what kind of father he was, what kind of husband he was, what kind of friend he was to others. And so I think that's key, just remembering that. I'll go back to what I said earlier. We have to strive to do these things because, perhaps we're all blessed. It just plays out and we all kind of fade into the sunset when we're 100 years old. But you could be called to be tested on these things immediately, just like he was. For, in his case, someone very close to him, but you could be called upon at your company. You're going to the store shopping and something insane happens. What are you going to do? Are you going to hide? Or are you going to look around and see if there's someone that you can protect? And I just think that the natural reaction is always going to be to self-preserve. So it has to be practicing virtue to overcome those things.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's really, obviously you and I we're supposed to record last week, and I waved off. I was struggling last week with just where we're at as a society. The fact that, think of what you will, regardless of what you think of Donald Trump,
Yeah.
the fact that there are people still walking around openly wishing for his demise is just, I it's disgusting to me. The amount of people that are walking around this country, this great country, who have, that's afforded so many people such wonderful, happy, peaceful lives, would wish someone to be murdered, is just disgusting to me. And I when that happened, and all of a sudden we saw comments online about, people upset that the shooter missed. Like, I wasn't in any headspace to sit down and do a podcast last week, and I found myself thinking all week about Corey and the sacrifice that he made, and so
Yeah, I think obviously we use that word dignity a lot because it's part of our mantra, if you will. God has assigned as a duty the dignity of every woman, but it's always good to reflect upon definitions, like what is dignity. And so if you look at it in the virtue and character scholarship and all those kinds of things, certainly there's a faith-based component to this. You could probably do it secular as well, but you and I travel in the faith-based world, and that is that dignity, the real foundation of dignity, comes from the fact that every human being, I'm going to say it clearly there, every human being is made in the image and likeness of God. So by virtue of that, automatically is afforded that dignity, like no other creature or no other thing. I mean, there's nothing. Yeah, this is it. Like you and I and everybody listening to this and everybody at that rally and everybody in the world, whoever has been or will be or currently is, has that dignity by virtue of their by virtue of their creation as a human being, has that dignity. Important to distinguish between birth and creation. Everybody by virtue of creation has that dignity. And so, look, I make no bones about it. I'm not from the left side of the political spectrum. I don't like many of the politicians on the left or even people who believe in those kinds of things. That doesn't detract from the fact that I always keep in mind that they're made in the image and likeness of God, and they deserve that human dignity just as much as you and I do. And so I always lean towards, of course, I don't succeed at it all the time, but always lean towards giving them the benefit of the doubt because of that dignity, remembering that God loves them, that Jesus Christ went to the cross for them, not them as a group, for each one of them.
Mm-hmm.
And how can we, knowing that, wish any kind of harm, physical or any other kind of harm, to that person? Does it mean I want them to win in an election? No. Does it mean I want them to have more power than they should have? No, because I think they'll possibly do bad things that hurt people with them. But that doesn't mean at all that gives me the right to either do myself or even wish someone else would do it, physical harm to them all the way to death. So, like you said, it is incredible how many people have become so hard-hearted and so lost in a sea of not understanding that basic human dignity that all of us have, that they would actually want, desire, and are even willing to be public saying, gosh, I wish I wish that bullet had, been more accurate or whatever. Shocking.
I'll say this though. What I see a lot from people, especially on the left, is a requirement of mental gymnastics to be able to defend a particular position they've taken. And just hear me out on this. And I think it's something that's definitely been stated that, look, for the last 3.5 years, or I guess 8 years, people have said that Donald Trump is Hitler, right? Like, he's terrible, he's Hitler, he's Hitler, he's Hitler. Those that say they wished the bullet didn't miss him are at least being somewhat intellectually honest, because they're being consistent. Because you can't on Monday say Trump's Hitler. He's gonna ruin everything. He's gonna kill everybody, and this is gonna be the end of it. And then the next day go, boy, I'm so thankful he didn't get killed. Because you wouldn't say Hitler needs to die, Adolf Hitler, the Hitler. Hitler needs to die, and then the next day, well, glad we missed him, because that just would have been terrible to take his life. Hitler, I think needed to die. Hitler died. So the people who are at least cheering on or lamenting the fact that this assassin has missed are at least being intellectually consistent. Now, I disagree with them, because I think generally when you ask them, why is he so bad? The only answer they come up with is, well, he's lied about things. And show me a human walking on the face of the earth that hasn't lied about something.
Especially a politician.
I don't think lying, the punishment for lying, should be death. So disgusting nonetheless, but I'm disgusted with where we are at in society. And I've been high-fiving people and, cheering on those that are openly supporting President Trump for re-election.
Yeah. You're hitting on something interesting though, and that is, back to dignity though. It's why should anyone you have to be so careful with words, right? And I'm competitive, you're competitive. We both competed in college athletics. I want to win, but at what cost? And so in politics, politicians want to win. Obviously, there's power at play, all kinds of things at play here. I get it. And you and I are both marketers too. We know how important words are and how influential they can be in terms of persuading people to go one direction or another. Yet, you and I, because we more importantly at our core, we desperately want to focus on what's true in terms of what God says is true. That's what we carry at the core of us. So we don't throw around words, especially when we know they're going to influence people. We don't do that carelessly. And for people who have been throwing around the Hitler thing now, I guess, for about a decade or so, it's so incredibly careless. And look at what's happening, whether it was Trump or anyone else, because if you're gonna make that claim, so they make the claim knowing what the result will be in terms of how it will influence people to despise a particular person. But if you're going to make the claim, it's so disingenuous and frankly evil to not be able to look at anything he does and equate it with what everyone knows Hitler was as a person, right? It's so night and day. There's no similarities whatsoever, like nothing, in terms of political beliefs or anything. There really is nothing. So you just make this crazy assertion of this person is Hitler. And because you have a megaphone to the masses and a very compliant media who's basically, bends the knee, look at the result. It's resulted in millions and millions and millions and millions of people who believe something that is objectively not is it not true. It's not even in the universe of being true.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that's frightening, because it shows that there are some people who are, let's call them elites, who are so willing to carelessly use claims and make assertions that aren't true, but they don't care.
Sure.
They don't care. They don't care. They're more than happy to manipulate the masses to get the result that they want, even if the outcome is the savage death of their political opponents. They don't care.
Well, but and here, like, playing that to its conclusion, think about it this way. All right, let's assume that the assassin was the 20-year-old kid that was shot and killed. Okay, so I mean, I know, not assume, but that he was the sole person that did it. There's, I'm not getting into conspiracy theories. It's just the person that they shot as having been the shooter. He's 20 years old. So at the age of 12, Trump came into office. So think of the time leading up to Trump actually becoming the president of the United States. From the age of 12, maybe 11, until the day he was shot and killed, he has only heard that Trump is Hitler. He's evil. He's evil incarnate. He's the reason why everything that could ever have gone wrong has gone wrong.
Oh, and don't forget the end of democracy as we know it.
Correct.
I mean, existential threat, all those kinds of hyperbole, this crazy stuff.
So, I mean, if all you've ever heard at school are those messages, right? I mean, we've gotten rid of prayer in school. We've gotten rid of the Pledge of Allegiance. We have teachers who are teaching children very clearly non-truths, right? That you can change your gender. If you're a boy and you want to be a girl, well, hey, take this pill, do this thing, and boom, whammo, bammo, you're now the other gender.
Yeah.
So our education system is full of lies. This kid has grown up hearing only that Donald Trump is the devil and Hitler. Can you blame him for taking that step and that action? I mean, maybe in his mind, he thought he was going to be a hero that saved democracy. But, to bring it back to why you and I have started this podcast, the education component of this kid grew up believing that Trump was evil and needed to die, and he took a shot at it. What is another thing that kids are being taught in schools is that, murdering your baby is literally the only solution if you get or have an unplanned pregnancy. Only solution is let's go type in Planned Parenthood and see how they can solve it, because what we've been told, that's healthcare. Murdering a poor innocent baby, a defenseless baby in the womb, cutting it into pieces and vacuuming it out of the mother's body is healthcare. So clearly our education system needs to be changed and overhauled. And no better example of it than this would-be assassin.
That's a great point. I forgot how young he is, and how many more are like him. And look, let's not. There's enough guilt to go around. I mean, there have been some wackos on the right side of the political aisle too, who spew this just weird stuff that has no basis in reality whatsoever. So it goes both ways. Mm-hmm. That being said, when you look at the education system now from, basically preschool all the way through to, the highest heights of PhD, it appears that so much of that is now strongly based in a kind of leftist worldview, like all of it. And that is exceedingly odd. Not sure how it happened, but we're starting to see, as that has grown stronger over the past couple of decades, now we're starting to see the fruits of it, or the rotten fruits, probably a better way to say. And just in these things that you and I and many who watch this, of course, would see in society. You mentioned the gender thing, the whole diversity, equity, inclusion thing, kind of this belief that almost like this worshiping of equity. And instead of like being based in truth, the truth is God bestows dignity equally on every human being. God does not bestow, obviously, talents equally on everybody. And so what?
Yeah.
That's his prerogative. Okay. Why try to think that you can just say something like, Doug, like, I speak Japanese, right? Doug, you're Japanese because we're just going to use words that say so. So we just like have changed reality. You're fluent in Japanese because that's how it is. When objectively, if I start speaking Japanese to you, you'll be clueless. But like that sounds like a ridiculous example, but it's exactly what's happening. We're doing these things and putting people in positions they have no business being there whatsoever. People graduating with degrees and they're not even competent in the area that they have a degree from, and unwillingness to test that just because it might hurt them or trigger them or something. It's bizarre land, and like I said, we're starting to see all the rotten fruit from that. And I think, Doug, there tend to be like counter movements, throughout history. So I'm praying to God the counter movement will swing back, the other way. But I think it may be a while. I mean, I think the fruit is really rotten, and this could take a while to overcome. We'll see.
Well, we are certainly living in interesting and strange times. So,
yes, we are.
Yeah. Well, thanks for letting me get that off my chest and share my musings with you, Brett. It's always a pleasure.
Yeah, it was great, Doug. Thank you.
Yep. And we'll have a great week and see you this time. Same Brett channel. Same Brett time, same Brett channel.
Beautiful. Love it. I'll see you.
Take care.
God bless you, brother. See you.